Racism. What is it and how do we talk about it? People in our media often focus on interpersonal accounts of racism when talking about race and racial justice. But when overt acts of discrimination such as stereotypes and prejudices, racial slurs, bigotry, hate speech, and other such micro and macroaggressions start to become a recurring pattern, you have to ask yourself, what is maintaining it? There are many ways to discuss how racism and other acts of discrimination are deeply rooted into the fabric of our society, from the large wealth gap as a product of redlining, to the inherent racial bias in hiring practices, to racial disparities in healthcare, to mass incarceration, to the war on drugs, to discrimination in the criminal justice system. It is clear that racism is much more than just what meets the eye. Racism is an invisible system of discrimination and injustice that was established and is upheld by our societal institutions. This perpetuating problem is called institutional racism. Institutional racism is a heavily built system of power and privilege based on race. And until we understand how our government and social systems are structured and how oppression takes place against minority groups every day, we will never be able to confront the issue of institutionalized racism properly. In the realm of higher education, college campuses around the country have been gaining major national attention for protests against institutions that create a campus climate where individuals feel comfortable committing hateful acts against minority students that are biased, degrading, and insensitive. This ignited responsive activism is not a result of new and isolated incidents, but rather the culmination of decades of discrimination. Arguments over free speech and tone policing has not only allowed individuals to lose sight of the larger issue, but in some cases completely deny the existence of institutional racism. Listed are just a few of the ways in which one can see the manifestation of racism in the institution of higher education. The demands among university groups are similar in nature and involve challenging the deeply rooted norms that allow for discrimination at both the interpersonal and institutional level. At Cal Poly, it is ultimately the job of administration to bring about strong measures of institutional changes with the goal of eradicating racism and other pertinent isms within our university to create an inclusive campus culture. But during this long road, what can you do? Acknowledge that racism exists, not only interpersonally in the interactions you see every day, but also how it is systemically woven into our university. Get educated on the issues and take time to do your research. Be introspective of yourself and your own biases. Be empathetic and listen to and understand the stories and experiences of others. Continue the dialogue and challenge yourself to see perspectives different from the norm. Hold yourself and others accountable for the stereotypes that are perpetuated throughout our campus. And ultimately, look at the kind of conversations you are having and the media you are viewing, and ask yourself, is this maintaining or challenging the system of institutional racism?